So this is the Farmall 140 tractor. And right in the back there, behind this wheel here, see there's a little tractor point. This is one behind each tractor tire. And so when the field's bare, I go through the field with just these two things down behind. The tractor wheel then is going through this pretty fluffed up soil and it compacts it. This I thought was a bad thing, but actually now I realize that there's some wisdom in this. That by packing the dry soil, it's making for that moisture thing that I don't want to happen most of the time. But if I'm trying to sprout a seed, maybe I do want that to happen, just for the sprouting of the seed. So I make 2 furrows. And then when I get to the end of the bed, I turn the tractor around, put the tire in one of those furrows, and go back, and now I have 3 furrows. I do the same thing, go back, now I have 4 furrows, and I do it so the whole field is nothing but furrows, all spaced the distance of the two of the tires. Does that make sense? Okay, then we go through and we drop seeds in the furrows. We still do this by hand, we don't have a planter. And so we drop seeds and we always step on the seeds as we're planting. This keeps my workers from drinking too much before they go out. I'm just kidding. So then there's 3 cultivator points right here. 1, 2, 3, and there's 3 on the other side. And they're offset like this, or I'm going to go like this. And so then as I pull the tractor forward, it puts dirt back into the furrow. And so I've got the seed in the furrow firm down from stepping on it, and then I'm putting loose soil on top. So the loose soil on top then dries out, but there's moisture enough to sprout those seeds. So even if it doesn't rain, my crop comes up. Yeah. So then, so what I've done is I've made the furrows, and then to cover them up, I straddle the rows, so I move the tractor over half of that distance, so that now the row is right down the center of the tractor. These tractors have the engine over to the side, they're offset a little bit, so I can see really well right down there. But you can make the mistake of looking right there all the time. It's easy to get wobbly. So you find a point on the tractor and you try to look a little bit ahead, because then you can, when you steer, it's a little bit easier. And then every time, a few days after rain, whenever the soil works. So after rain, the soil's wet and it gets kind of compacted, but then in a day or two, or even too wet in the morning, but that same evening, it can dry out enough and it starts to feel like butter. And that's when I want to cultivate, when it really works up nice and easily. It's not too dry, it's not too moist. If I wait too long, it'll turn really hard, and then it doesn't break up as nice, yeah. So we're paying a lot of attention to the moisture content of the soil, yeah. So, we plant in the field, we're going over it and straddling these rows. Then sometimes we mulch the fields with hay and dogs. They make good mulches. And so, if I was a gardener, I would probably just have a permanent mulch. And I would, every now and then pull it back and make sure the soils were loose, deep enough and stuff. But a lot of what I would do would be mulching and more mulching. And I think that's a lot what they do here, isn't it? A lot of mulching, yeah. So in a lot of ways, I like the saying that a garden needs a farm. So anytime you have a garden like this, you have to have a farm somewhere to get your manure, to get your old rotted hay, to maybe get some wood, forest products and stuff to help your compost pile. So they work together, because a farm, oftentimes the farmer, he's not raising, tomatoes and sweet corn. He's busy farming, and so the gardener can help supply the farmer's kitchen with some of those things, and the farmer can help the gardener by, getting some extra manure, rotted hay or something. So yeah, we mulch tomatoes and garlic. Those 2 crops we mulch every year, and then sometimes I'll mulch cucumbers or squash if if I feel an impending drought coming and it looks like that would be profitable for me, I'll do that. And then late in the year, we'll mulch the peppers and eggplant field. Simply, it just makes it more pleasant to go out there, and we don't have to keep hoeing them. The Farmall tractor works great until your crops get so high, and then you can't get over them. You knock them down. So we use that until the plants get high. And of course, with tomatoes, we put cages around them, so that helped. This was an interesting little thing I did one year. I put 2 beds of lettuce right in the middle of the tomato field. So I had 3 rows of tomatoes, a couple of beds of lettuce, and then 3 more rows of tomatoes. And I did this because it was in the middle of a field. And one of the big things in farming or in gardening on a larger scale is getting the stuff out of the field. And for years, I just never even gave that a thought. I just planted all this stuff, and then we'd have to, be parked a pickup truck over here and haul the baskets of tomatoes all the way, to the end of the field, which could be a couple hundred feet. So what I did is I grew lettuce, and then by the time the tomatoes were harvested, the lettuce was gone, and it was just weeds. So I bush hogged it, and I had a road right down the middle of the garden. And I would just drive the pickup truck right down the road, and the tomatoes never had to be moved more than a few feet. Yeah, so that's thinking a little bit ahead to how you're going to get your crop out of the field. When they do tobacco, I had always, wondered, they would just leave a row out every now and then, and I realized, well, that was so that they could drive through and drop the tobacco sticks, and just for the ease of harvesting. So I'm a big fan of the mulches, and So another thing with the cultivators, like I said, there's 3 like this, and then there's 2 behind it. So when my crop's really small, I might take these 2 off, so that the space between where it's cultivating is wider. And that way it's not accidentally throwing clouds on top of my little baby plants. And then I'll put the things on it later. I don't mind that, because after the plant gets up a little bit, throwing a little soil in there helps to smother more weeds. Yeah. And then once the crop gets bigger, I might take those 2 off again, because I don't want to disturb my plant's roots. Yeah. And then for a crop like potatoes, I don't know if you can tell, but we hill them. So we put little disc hillers on, so we can drive this through the field, and it throws the dirt up. And potatoes have to have that, to keep them from turning green. You don't want to get light on potatoes. And then we find it useful for corn, in that it helps to keep the corn from blowing over when we have like a wind. It's just so frustrating to have your corn way up there, have your nice big ears on it, and then we have these big windstorms, thunderstorms and stuff. You have those here too, I'm sure, don't you? Yeah. Where all of a sudden the corn is all laying over like this, and then it tries to grow up like this, and the whole field gets to be a mess. Yeah. And then sometimes I'll get a chance to hill peppers or tomatoes if, if I feel like I can get by without smothering too many of the bottom. Beans like to be hilled. Many of those plants like to be. Now, cucumbers or squash, they're too sprawly. You can't really hill those kind of things. They do have, I have these knives. They come down, and then they go in like this, but not all the way. And it's made to go over vining plants and cut the weeds underneath the vines. But I haven't figured out how to do that without ripping a bunch of plants up. So I just haven't figured that one out yet. Yeah, so this is a picture of potatoes, but way in the back you can see there's cows in that field. So all these fields are surrounded by an 8-foot tall fence to keep deer out and pastured cattle, around them. So the cattle are rotated every few days to new pastures. Yeah. So the other tillage is damaging. So I like to leave the tillage in ridges. So it's not flat. It's like boom, 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 boom. It's like that. And so a secondary reason besides checking evaporation that we want to till is to get air in the soil. We're aerating. And so if you can picture something flat and then picture something that's like this, you're going to have a lot more air if it's like that. And when you go to hoe or to till, any weeds that are sprouting on a curve like that, the weeds are going to come off quicker than if they're on a real flat thing. It's harder to get the roots of the weeds up. Yeah. So we like to keep things looking more like waves rather than just really flat. Yeah. So, we're live again. Oh, this is the disc killers. Did you see that? It was a thing that was spinning around like that. And those are harrows. But you can sort of see how I'm going slow. I'm not going real deep. I'm just kind of moving this dirt around. Yeah, so this is a way to kind of hill these potatoes up. It kind of throws moisture. The dirt itself acts as a mulch around the plants. The little harrows on the back, rather than having the points, like making the furrows, helps me with erosion problems. So if I have those points and I leave a furrow that's like this deep and it's going downhill and it rains, that's going to create a gully. Yeah, so you have to watch out for that kind of stuff. It's not power steering, by the way. And it smothers some of the weeds too that are growing in there. No, I don't have that harrow. That harrow on this side isn't set right. Do you notice how it was too deep in the front? I mean, I can see that the thing's wrong and I'm doing there. Okay, yeah. So
how do you usually set your implements? You go on like a flat, like on a paved area?
Yeah, just I have the hammer and crescent wrench with me all the time, and I just keep an eye on it. If I notice something, I just try not to be in a hurry.
So you don't use any power tools to change up your things?
No, so that old tractor is made. So I'm trying to farm, you might have noticed, it's all old-time equipment that I'm using. I don't have, someone says, well, Jeff, why don't you use a flail mower and a seed drill? I'm like, well, I can't afford that stuff. They're expensive. And I want to show people how you can farm correctly using stuff that people had a long time ago. You don't need all this new stuff. Yeah, I'm sure that a flail mower and a seed drill would be better, but they're going to cost a lot of money. And the money has got to come from my customers. There's no other place for the money to come from, And so I have to somehow figure out economically what I can afford and what I can't. So if I have $10,000 or $12,000 to spend on a flail mower, I can buy these farm all tractors all day long for $2,000. I'll just buy these. And I think I can learn how to farm with them. Do you guys have mowers and things like that in your?
I've got that same farm all 1950.
Yeah.
We've got like multiple ones, and that's how we do all of our cultivation.
It works great, doesn't it? Yeah.
They're awesome. They're hard to find parts for at this point. The 70s ones we can still find parts, but the 50s, those are.
So is yours a Super A?
We've got 3 100s. I think they're like exact same farm all offset motor and stuff.
So just briefly, since you're interested, the Farmall company made a tractor called a A, and then they improved it and they made the Super A. Then they made a tractor called a B, and then they made the C series, which were two row, and then they made the 100, and then the next year they made the 130.
I think we have 150 maybe?
No, then the next year they made the 140. They didn't change that design for 20 years. They finally got the tractor that they wanted. They made 6 million of these Farmall 140s. So that's the one I recommend because you can find parts for the 140s where you can't find it for the 100s. Yeah, my friend had a 100 or a 130 or something, and we had a real hard time. But the 140s are the one that they made for many, many years. I think from the mid-50s to the mid-70s. And then they changed to a diesel one called a 274. And it's like in 1974, they decided to make tractors not handy for farmers. This thing was horrible. So on my tractor, you push the gas forward to go faster and pull it back to go slower. This one was the opposite. On the other one, the cultivator points, you go push it forward, they go up. On this newer one, you push it forward, they go down. It was just so confusing, and they didn't make them very many. And I don't think since then they haven't made one row cultivating tractors. Yeah, so you kind of have to find these things. But yeah, so the 140 is the common one. Yeah.